Chapter 8. Hours later he was filling out paperwork in the hospital, a headache still beating its way around inside his skull. Molson rubbed his eyes as he handed the forms back to a nurse and was buzzed through to the exam room. Margot had been sedated. She'd thrown a fit when they had put her in the ambulance. She wanted to continue to stargaze, and the paramedics had needed to assess how she was after inhaling so much gas. The firefighters had opened everything up so the gas could clear the house while the gas company shut down the flow. Margot had hit a line in the basement with her axe while she was fighting the weather boogeyman. Now in the hospital, she lay, small and frail, in a bed, looking like she could not possibly lift an axe, let alone swing one. An oxygen mask was on her face, and she was hooked up to machines to monitor her vitals. Molson slumped into the single chair. "Do you have a list of your mother's medications?" A doctor stepped in, holding a chart. "It was in the house," Molson said tiredly. "I can tell you most of the meds that I remember, but truthfully she don't take them anyways. I try to make sure she gets them on time, but she just throws them up." "Has she seen a psychiatrist lately?" the doctor asked. "She won't go unless I drag her there," Molson replied woodenly. "Says it's a waste of her time. We saw Dr. Yeltz maybe 3 months ago. He suggested institutionalizing her." The doctor scribbled something on his chart. It might be wise to revisit the idea. "She don't want to be in a psych ward." Molson looked up at the doctor sharply. "Even for a small amount of time, institutionalization might do Miss Colburn a world of good," he said gently. "We could see that she receives her medications, gets appropriate therapy, and work to regenerate her safely into society if it's a possibility. Your mother would be in a safe place where she could not be in danger to herself or others." Molson guessed the doctor had probably heard about the axe to the gas line from the paramedics. He rubbed a hand over his face. "It would also give you a break from caring for her," the doctor probed. "You must be exhausted. She cannot have been easy to look after." "She asked me to take care of her." Molson swallowed thickly. "I promised I would." "You would be taking care of her by seeing that she gets the best care possible," the doctor noted with sympathy. "I'm going to start the admitting process. In a few hours we'll have her moved to her new room." What if he had not come home in time? Molson wondered. She could have blown herself up. She could have blown up the whole neighborhood. He set his head in his hands with a shuddering breath. Maybe he was out of his mind, thinking he could do it all, thinking he could care for her amongst all the rest of the things on his plate. School, work, doing his rounds, taking care of Margot. Something had to give, and he admitted he probably had not been giving her the supervision that she needed. "Okay. You're doing the right thing," the doctor told Molson before he left, drawing the curtains so that Molson could have some time alone with Margot. He did not feel like he was doing the right thing. Molson felt guilty. He felt like he was failing. He didn't know why he had come here. It was not like he was going to magically find something that the FBI had missed. It was more likely that someone would call the cops and have him escorted away for trespassing. It was an upscale sort of place, with huge houses overlooking the beach and a marina accommodating all the boats. He supposed he just needed to get away from the hospital for a while, away from Margot and feeling like he was doing the wrong thing by letting them keep her. She would hate him when she woke up and figured out where she was. Margot had a thing about hospitals. Molson walked along the dock, looking at the area, trying to distract himself. This was how the other half lived. It was nice if you could afford it. There was an empty slip, and Molson paused, wondering if it was the spot where Michael's boat had been. The FBI had seized it for evidence. It had been a dumb idea to come here. There was nothing to learn. Molson drained his take-out cup of coffee and looked around for a garbage to dump it in before he made the long journey back into the city. "I hope you're not going to litter," a voice piped up nearby. Molson raised an eyebrow at a girl carrying a book under her arm, who blinked up at him with a solemn attitude. She was perhaps 8 or 9. "Wasn't planning on it. You got a garbage around here?" It's over by the clubhouse, she pointed.
What are you, the litter police? Said Molson, only half joking.
No, she gave him a dirty look. The other guy threw trash off the boat that was here. I thought you might do the same.
The boat that was here?
Molson pointed to the empty slot in the water. Yep, Mr. Ramsley's boat, she clarified.
When did some guy throw trash off the boat?
Molson asked, starting to feel a little excited.
What sort of trash?
It was a baggie with white powder in it, she stated importantly. I know, because I grabbed the net and I took it out of the water. Otherwise, it could have gotten wrapped around a motor, or a fish could have eaten it.
What day?
Molson barely breathed the words. Here it was, the missing piece. Someone who would be able to prove evidence had been planted on the boat. October 2nd. She held out her book. I wrote it in my journal. It was the morning of my birthday. I came out to watch the sunrise, and there was a man on Mr. Ramsley's boat. He threw the baggie overboard and then left. 1 day before Michael's arrest. Molson could not believe his luck. He had stumbled on a witness.
Do you think you could remember what the man looked like? If you saw him again, would you know who he was?
Of course I would. She gave him a look like he was silly. Molson took a deep breath to control his emotions. He was going to get Michael out of jail, all through the testimony of a little girl. Digging into his cargo pants pocket, Molson took out his cell phone, swiping to a picture of David Ramsley he pulled off the internet.
Is this him?
She shook her head. No, the man was younger. Molson's heart sank. It could have been anyone. Now all they had was a mystery man, possibly planting evidence the day before Michael's arrest.
It wasn't Mr. Ramsley.
No, I know Mr. and Mrs. Ramsley. She pointed up the beach. They're our neighbors. Madison! A woman came walking down the dock at a fast clip.
Your mom?
Guessed Molson. Yep. Madison rolled her eyes. She is overprotective. Madison, what have we said about talking to strangers? The breathless woman grabbed her daughter's shoulders, giving Molson a nervous look. He was asking about Mr. Ramsley's boat. Madison tried to explain, but was cut off by the fearful woman. Madison, hush! She remonstrated before turning her attention to Molson. I do not know who you are, but you should not be talking to little girls alone. I think you should go before I call the security guard over.
Ma'am, if it makes you feel safer, please call the security guard,
Molson offered. He had surprised her, he could tell. She had judged him by his appearance and thought him a scary bad guy. Tamping down his feelings of disappointment, Molson focused on Madison and what she may have seen.
Your daughter saw a man on Mr. Ramsley's boat the day before he was arrested. I'm trying to figure out who the man was. It's my hope that we can prove Michael Ramsley innocent of what he's been charged with.
She hesitated. The Ramsleys have always been such good neighbors. They're nice people.
I believe he didn't do what they are accusing him of,
Molson explained patiently. He searched his wallet for one of the business cards he had swiped from Drew.
If your daughter can help prove that, then I'd really appreciate your family's cooperation. My brother is Detective Andrew Colburn. He works with the local police department. He's going to want to talk to Madison about what she saw.
Are you a private detective? She frowned as she took the card. Madison's mom was obviously trying to put him in a better category of class so that she could feel more comfortable talking to him. Is that why you're dressed this way? And have the tattoos?
Something like that,
Molson prevaricated nicely. He could see her relax as she pocketed the card. We'll be happy to help. Amy, the Ramsley's daughter, sometimes comes over for play dates. She motioned to her own daughter. Madison's really good with her, and I enjoy Anne's company.
That's nice,
he responded automatically as a thought occurred to him. Molson quickly tried to find a photo on the internet, but did not see one. Dialing his brother, Molson put the phone to his ear.
Colburn,
Drew responded distractedly.
Do you have a picture of Law? Asked Molson. What has that got to do with anything? Drew asked, concerned. Where have you been? I've been trying to get a hold of you. Do you got a picture or not? Scowled Molson. I got a lead on something. Sending it now. Drew responded grumpily. You can't avoid this. I want to... Molson hung up the phone and checked his messages. Pulling up the picture, he held his cell phone so that Madison could see it. Is this the guy you saw?
Yes, that's him, Madison said excitedly. Are you going to arrest him for littering?
Molson had a crooked smile. My brother is going to arrest him for that and a whole lot more.
Molson paused as he entered the ward. Margot was strapped into a chair by the window, vacantly looking outside. Her hair had been brushed and she looked clean in a pair of hospital pajamas. Ignoring the twist in his heart, Molson set down a bag of items he brought with him for Margot's comfort. Pulling up a chair, Molson took one of her hands in his. Hey, Ma. She spared him a glance before looking out the window. You ignoring me? Molson dredged up a bit of a smile. I brought you some stuff. Your brush, toothpaste, a toothbrush, your pajamas, your slippers, a book if you get bored. I don't want a book, she hissed. I want to go home.
You can't go home. Molson's smile slipped.
You never let me do what I want. Margot glared at him. You're mean.
Ma. Molson pulled his hand away from hers, slumping in his chair. There was no reasoning with her when she got like this.
Jana would never do this to me, Margot said snidely. You hate me. You had them lock me up.
That's not true. Molson defended himself. It wasn't like she would hear and understand, more that he had to make the attempt for his own peace of mind. I love you very much. I've been looking after you for the last 4 years. Jana hasn't even been around. She had refused to come after Margot had insisted Kara was inhabited by an alien from Mars and needed to be covered in aluminum foil to protect the rest of them.
Jana! Jana!
Margot yelled. Molson pinched the bridge of his nose. Ma, if you keep yelling, the nurses will sedate you.
I don't know who you are. Why are you calling me Ma? I'm not your mother. Margot sniffed, looking out the window.
I'm your son, Molson patiently explained. He knew that Margot's moods shifted like the weather. There was no point in trying to keep up.
I don't have any sons. I have a daughter, Jana, Margot insisted. Jana is fun. She lets me dress her up like a princess. We go sledding in the park. I don't know you. Go away.
Molson ignored her, looking at the squirrels out the window for a time. Hey, a soft voice said. Molson looked up to see Holly pulling up a chair. He spared a glance at Margot, but saw that she was sleeping. Hey. I saw that she came in yesterday. Holly had Margot's chart. Molson nodded. He had been busy yesterday and concluded that since Margot was so sedated, she would probably just sleep the whole time. Instead, he came to visit her today. Where did she get the axe? Holly asked him gently. She had heard through the grapevine what had happened prior to admitting. I don't know, but she always finds them, Molson said woodenly. He was exhausted by the whole business. There might be a cache of them in the basement that I haven't found. I hope you would take them away, she softly cried, hoping that she was not going to offend him. Every time I find one, Molson sighed. I throw them in the trash. I take them back to the hardware store. I list them for free on Craigslist. People think I have an axe and hatchet fetish. I don't know where she gets them or how she has money to buy them, but she's got to be on a first-name basis with some hardware store owner. I get rid of one, 3 days later she's got another and is using it to beat the walls, the floor, or a chair. Holly gave him an assessing look. You should go home and sleep. Molson had a bitter laugh. They condemned the house. Holly looked at him in shock. How could they live in a house that was fit to be condemned? Do you have some place to stay? There's a room behind the shop, Molson told her. I've got some stuff there. There's a couch. Holly reached out and took his hand. What about your brother or sister? Can you stay with them? They aren't exactly being welcoming right now. Molson did not want to talk about it. Talking about it would just bring up all the pain involved. He wasn't sure he could deal with that today on top of the pain his own mother gave him. I got some good news. Good news? Holly pressed gently. I went to the marina where Michael keeps his boat. I'm not sure why. I guess I was just curious.
Molson played with her fingers.
Met a kid, Madison. She saw Agent Law on Michael's boat, throwing away a clear baggie that had white powder in it. She can place Law planting evidence on the boat. Her mom took her down to the police station this morning to give a statement.
Does this mean that Law's superior will give the immunity for Tremblay and the others to testify? Holly held her breath in hope.
Drew's supposed to talk to him today, nodded Molson. If we get the go-ahead, Law will be prosecuted for falsifying evidence, David will be taken back into custody for the original charges against him, and Michael will be exonerated.
You did it. Holly squeezed his hand. You actually did it. Molson allowed himself a half-hearted smile. He should be celebrating. Then again, they still only had FBI agent Kepler's word that he would make everything happen. Molson would wait until everything was over before he celebrated. Oh, Molson. Holly hugged him happily. It finally happened.
It happens when Michael is released and David is in prison.
Molson cautioned her, even as he gathered her closer, breathing in her scent. He closed his eyes, savoring the moment.
Until then, we hope for the best.
All too soon she drew away with a blush and stood. I should get back to work.
Are you going to be taking care of her?
Molson nodded at Margot. Holly consulted on this floor. No. Holly leaned down, brushing her lips across his. I told them it was a conflict of interest.
Is it?
Murmured Molson.
That might imply that we were in a relationship.
Yes. Holly smiled, trailing a finger down the side of his face before leaving. Molson leaned back in the chair, mulling over what Holly had just said, holding it close to him like the precious gift it was. What is she doing here? Jana plopped a diaper bag on the bed before sitting down in the chair that Holly had just vacated, baby Miguel looking out from a sling with wide eyes. Why is she in the hospital? She looks fine. Molson looked at Jana with a little shock.
Why are you here?
The hospital called me. Apparently, I'm on Mom's contact list. I called Drew. Jana narrowed her eyes as she studied Margot. He will be here at any time. Have they got her on new meds? They know that her health plan is as basic as it gets. She's not racking up any bills for us to pay, is she?
I upgraded her plan a while ago.
Molson tamped down his temper.
There won't be any unexpected bills.
You upgraded her plan. Working in the chop shop. Jana was dubious of his claim. You cannot be making that much money. He barely spent money except on Margot or the people he adopted on his rounds. Molson's biggest expense was his schooling. He also had invested his wages back into the shop, bought in a couple of bars as a silent partner, and otherwise was a saver. His savings were taking a hit, but he had still some and was not worried. Once he graduated, he would be able to make the money back.
It's not a chop shop. We modify cars.
You put secret compartments in them where people can store weapons and drugs, Jana said in derision.
We customize. What the customers choose to do is up to them.
Molson tried hard not to get into an argument with Jana over work. What the shop did was legal.
Why are you here?
I told you. The hospital called me, responded Jana. When does Wacko Margot get out?
Don't call her that.
Molson agreed Margot was crazy. It still wasn't right to call her names.
I mean, why did you bother to come? You haven't seen her for almost 5 years. Why start caring now?
I care? Jana glared at him.
Could have fooled me,
Molson muttered, bitterness creeping into his voice. I have a family, Jana defended herself. I've been busy.
Protecting your kids from the low people like Ma and myself?
Molson knew the words were a mistake to say, but he couldn't seem to help himself.
Arguing already?
Drew entered the room. He looked at Margot impassively.
Are we having an emergency family meeting?
We need to decide what is going to happen with Margot, Jana declared. She can't stay in the hospital forever, and she's not moving in with me.
What happened anyway? Asked Drew. Why is she hospitalized? She took an axe to the gas line in the basement, drawled Molson.
What? Drew looked at Molson in surprise. I knew she was crazy, Jana hissed, patting little Miguel as he fussed.
Why would she take an axe to a gas line? Drew asked incredulously. She was locked in another one of her delusions, Molson said tiredly.
She's supposed to be taking medications for those.
Yes, when she bothers to take them, Molson agreed, his ire rising.
Aren't you making sure that she takes her pills? Jana had a bit of an edge to her tone.
When will I do that? Molson did not bother to hide his disdain. When I'm working? When I'm in school? When I'm sleeping? I do my best, and she hides her pills. She flushes them down the toilet. She outright refuses, and sometimes after she has them, she'll just throw them up when my back is turned.
School? Drew frowned. Molson had not mentioned anything about going to school. Molson, she needs better care than that. She can't be an afterthought in your life. Jana ignored the school remark.
An afterthought? Growled Molson. Every day, I get up and I wonder what she's been up to during the night. Every break I get at work, I call her. I'm the one who makes sure she's got groceries. I'm the one who reminds her to shower. I'm the one who cleans up after her messes. I'm the one paying her bills. I bring her to center. I arrange for aftercare with the neighbor lady. I ain't seen neither of you helping me out, he continued angrily. I ask you to come by, visit her. You don't want to put up with her. It ain't convenient for you. Well, now she's here 'cause I can't do it all. She nearly blew up the house. Ma hasn't been right in the head for years. She should have been committed to an institution long ago, but she didn't want to go. So, fool I am, I didn't send her. Don't you two go judging me, telling me that I ain't done a good job when neither of you lifted a finger.
Molson, Jana began, but Molson stood, interrupting her.
No, I'm done with you two always judging me. You think you know so much? You make me feel like junk all the time. I'm doing my best, okay? My best. I'm the one who keeps trying to stay in your lives. Ain't neither of you care about me. You don't visit me. You don't ask me about my life. You kick me out like I'm dirt. Molson shook his head. Both of you can have Ma for the next 5 years. However, unlike you both, I'll still visit her.
Molson moved past them, walking out the door. Jana was bristling. Drew held up a hand to forestall her.
We deserve everything he said, Jana. It's the simple truth. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Where have you been? Barked Fielding after Molson.
He was walking through the hall, getting away from Jana and Drew. It was not like him to lose his temper like that. Molson did not feel any better for having done so. If anything, he felt raw over the experience. Nothing had been resolved. Molson shoved his hands in his pockets and watched Fielding stride toward him. Whatever was on Fielding's mind, it would not be good for Molson. Not for the first time, Molson wondered why he had gotten Fielding for his professor.
You've missed the last 2 days without informing me or the school as to your reason of absence, groused Fielding. I'm writing you up. One more infraction and you are done. Well, let me inform you. My mom is in the hospital, Molson replied. That's what I've been dealing with for the past 2 days.
It was obvious Fielding wasn't sure whether or not to trust if Molson was telling the truth.
She's in room 232B, Molson told him dryly.
Let him check up on it if he wanted.
Fielding looked at his watch. We have a full day of patients. Better get started. Molson hesitated. Is there any way I can get off today? I haven't slept. Do patients take a day off? Fielding asked rhetorically. If you skip today, that's 3 in a row. Then I could suspend you from the program.
Which Fielding would happily do.
Molson rubbed his face. Lead on. There's a tapeworm situation in exam 2, a kid with a fever in exam 3, and a dizzy woman in exam 5. Fielding handed Molson the charts as they walked. Which one comes first? Fever kid.
Molson knew that was the protocol. The kid was at more risk than the other two unless the woman's symptoms developed into something that was more urgent.
Debatable. Fielding started in on why the woman with the dizziness could be needed to see first.
They stepped into exam room 3.
You take the lead. Good morning.
Molson was not sure if it was still morning at all. It could have been afternoon. He gave a quick, unfelt smile in greeting. He didn't know why Fielding was suddenly letting him take the lead. That had never happened before.
I'm Molson Colburn. I'll be your attending today. What seems to be the issue with James?"
The mother took one look at Molson, and her lips pursed in disapproval. "You are not touching my son."
"Excuse me?"
Molson hesitated, surprised by her. "I'm not having some gangbanger looking at my son." She bristled with a hostile voice.
"Ma'am, I'm part of the residency program at the hospital. I'm not a member of any gang,"
Molson explained patiently. "I know what that tattoo means." She looked at Fielding. "Why would you have this man working here? Hospitals are supposed to be safe places. I'm going to report this."
"Ma'am, I'm just trying to do my job."
Molson looked at James, who was miserable and hot.
"Why don't you let me help your son?"
"You come anywhere near, and I will sue!" she exclaimed. "Get away from my son."
"Says on the chart that James has had a fever for the past 2 days. Is that true?"
Molson tried to divert her attention to James.
"Why don't you tell me what you've been doing to try to bring down the fever?"
"I said, get out. I want a real doctor." She grabbed her purse. "If you don't leave right now, I'm taking my son somewhere else." Fielding grabbed Molson's arm.
"Excuse us, ma'am."
Molson bit the inside of his cheek as he allowed Fielding to drag him outside the exam room.
"Do you see? Do you understand why you can't be a doctor?"
Fielding asked him.
"This was a special case. None of the other patients have said things like that."
Molson fought with a familiar feeling of anger and frustration over the situation.
"How many of them look at you with fear in their eyes? Doubt that you know what you're talking about? How many of them do not trust you? They stand a little closer to their kids. They hover like a hawk to make sure you're not going to steal their purses."
Fielding gestured to the tattoos on Molson's neck.
"As a doctor, you have to bring immediate authority and trust to the table. You can't do that."
Molson struggled with the familiar feeling of despair.
"I'm not planning at working on a posh hospital. My first pick is general." "I would think it would be worse there."
Fielding softened his tone.
"That demographic will know exactly what each of your tattoos mean. Those patients will be even more wary of you. Drop out of the program. Stay away from my daughter."
Molson had a sharp look at Fielding.
"Is this what this is all about? Holly, you got some nerve."
"I have some nerve?" Fielding had a short laugh.
"She is way out of your league. A man like you will only bring her down in the world. If you have any feelings for her at all, you'll walk away." "Leave Holly out of this," Molson growled. "You're angry because you know it's true," Fielding told him. "I'm angry because every day I gotta push against people like you," Molson said hotly. "You all judge like you're better than me. You're not."
"I'm not the one running around with gang tattoos on my neck," Fielding responded.
"I'm not the one with a tear tattoo symbolizing that I killed someone, then expecting people to trust and respect me. That is unrealistic. You're not the right man for this job. You're not the right man for my daughter. You'll never amount to anything. And yes, I'm better than you. Some whiny punk from the poor section of town. It's called privilege. I have it. You don't." "I can't deal with this right now."
Molson shoved the chart against Fielding's chest.
"You walk, you're out of the program," taunted Fielding. "I don't care," snarled Molson. "I'm walking away so I don't do anything I'll regret."
"Like get arrested for assault." Molson turned, marching blindly along the emergency department. Once outside, he drew in huge, gulping breaths. He had just ruined his life. It would take years, maybe 4 years of hard work to scrape together enough money with his savings to retake the practicum. Dropping out would leave a black mark on his student records. After an absence of that length, he might not even be accepted back into the program. He might lose his dream. He definitely would lose all the scholarships that he earned to take him this far. He needed those scholarships, and no more would be forthcoming since he had quit. He could report Fielding for harassment. Molson would have had a bitter laugh if the idea did not hurt so much. There was no point in reporting anyone. The Human Resources Administrator would take one look at Molson, judge him, and rule in favor of Fielding. Fielding was right. Molson did not garner a feeling of trust. People did not believe him. They second-guessed him. How could he be a doctor when no one trusted him to examine them, to understand the material, to give a diagnosis? Maybe it was all a delusion, thinking that he could do this professionally. The idea tore a hole through his gut. What about Holly? As a doctor, he thought he might be good enough for her. If he was not a doctor, he would just be a guy who worked in a custom auto shop with some business investments. Would he be enough? He knew Fielding would never approve of him. He would be causing a rift between Holly and her father. How could he ask her to choose? What about the favor he owed Tremblay? Were Drew and Jana right to try to protect their loved ones by banning Molson from their lives? If they were right, then who was he to put Holly in danger? It felt like a knife was twisting in his heart. Molson swallowed hard as he took in yet another shuddering breath. Everyone had been telling him he was trash for most of his life. Molson had rejected them, challenged them, wanted to prove that he could be something better, that he could help people and be somebody. Lot of good that did him. They were all right. He was just junk, and he should have stayed in his place in society where he belonged.